Fighters from the 28th, 93rd and 53rd Brigades of the Ukrainian Armed Forces have prevented Russian invaders from entering the industrial zone in Toretsk city in eastern Donetsk region and strengthening their position in the area. The invaders, who were advancing in small groups, were intercepted by drone operators of the Gurza unit. The invaders who wanted to advance were first targeted by drones. Later, while trying to enter the building, they were destroyed mainly by small arms fire. The only surviving soldier was shot and killed while trying to leave the area.
Ukrainian military penetrated the enemy's defense, demined and entered within 1.5 kilometers in the direction of Demidovka in the Belgorod region of Russia. This was stated by Defense Express Director Sergei Zugurets on air at Espresso. The attacking actions in the direction of the Belgorod region, we are talking about Demidovka and Grafovka, actually began 5 to 6 days ago, he noted. According to him, at first, the enemy held the settlement, and now there is information that Ukrainian troops are there. He said that Demidovka and Grafovka are about 20 kilometers from the settlement of Gwevo, and this is the eastern section of the Kursk bridgehead, which is still held by Ukrainian troops on enemy territory. And here we can draw two conclusions: not to give the enemy the opportunity to transfer troops that are suddenly freed up in Kursk to other parts of the front. Zugurets named the first reason for the military actions of our units in this part of the Russian Federation. He added that pinpoint strikes are taking place there, since the number of Ukrainian forces deployed to the Belgorod region is not significant. The expert notes that in this territory of the Russian Federation, there are areas where Russian military units were located, which actively used drones to attack our units. And in fact, this could have been a subtask to dislodge the enemy from those areas where his drones were located. Zugurets said. The expert noted that several strikes were carried out using our military aviation. In the Belgorod region, enemy command posts were destroyed, as well as 4 Russian helicopters that were used for the attacks. This indicates that our long-range weapons, in particular HIMARS, are quite active in this area. Also, literally in the Grafovka area, one of the bridges that provides Russian logistics was destroyed once again. In fact, thanks to aviation and long-range systems, this area is now under our control, and the enemy will have to respond with some actions, either to accumulate forces in this area or to take some other measures. Although the enemy has no other measures now, except for trying to influence our military, Zugurets emphasized. The internet reports that the Ukrainian army has allegedly taken control of another settlement in the Belgorod region. Russian war correspondent Vladimir Romanov, who runs the Telegram channel Romanov Light, wrote in the evening that the Russian army had lost the village of Popovka, located in the Krasnoyarsk district of the Belgorod region. He had reported the beginning of the offensive on this settlement in the afternoon. Popovka, Krasnoyarsk district, Belgorod region, territory of Russia temporarily occupied by Ukraine. The settlement came under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. As media reported on March the 18th, the Russian Defense Ministry accused Ukraine of attempting to disrupt negotiations between Russia and the United States of America by attacking the Belgorod region. At that time, the Russian Federation announced an attempt by the Ukrainian armed forces to wedge in the direction of two settlements in the region. War correspondents wrote about the successes of Ukrainian fighters and the losses of the Russian army. On the evening of March the 23rd, Russian bloggers announced that the village of Demidovka had come under Ukrainian control. It is worth noting that the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the country did not announce any new operations on Russian territory. The Russian-American talks in Riyadh have lasted more than 9 hours. One of the issues under discussion is the so-called Black Sea Initiative. In essence, this is another attempt to agree on the renunciation of military actions in the Black Sea. However, it is still impossible to call this a carbon copy of the notorious, stillborn Istanbul Agreement. American sources report that U.S. administration officials negotiating with the Russian delegation in the Saudi capital are making it clear that the Black Sea deal will be comprehensive and not just about creating security corridors. For this purpose, it is even proposed to jointly use U.S. and Russian satellite constellations to monitor the ceasefire. Accordingly, a complete refusal by Ukraine to launch naval strikes on Crimea, including the Crimean Bridge, is being discussed, and at the same time Russia's refusal to use Black Sea ships fleet to strike targets on the territory of Ukraine. Achieving a truce at sea would mean an end to attacks on Ukraine's port infrastructure by Russian occupiers. This statement was made by the spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy, Dmitry Pletenchuk. What Russia is putting into this is, of course, not hard to guess. But in any case, we need to read the final document, then we will be able to draw some conclusions, he emphasized in a comment to Radio Liberty. Pletenchuk noted that the naval component of Russian attacks is not the main one. Russia has used Caliber carriers in the Black Sea 3 times in the last 3 months. According to the spokesman for the Ukrainian Navy, it is difficult to call those uses successful. The rest of the applications are from the territory of the temporarily occupied Crimea. If we take the Iskander-M operational tactical missile system, the launches are from the territory of Crimea, that is, from land. If we take the launches of the Shakheds, this is also Cape Chowda, Crimea, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, Russian Federation. Yes, they come from the sea. We meet them from the sea. But is this a sea component or not? The missiles that they launch from aircraft from the Black Sea. Is this part of the ceasefire at sea? Dmitry Pletenchuk summed up. Earlier, retired Captain First Rank, former Deputy Chief of Staff of the Ukrainian Navy, Andriy Ryzenko, said that a ceasefire at sea should initially include a ceasefire in both the Black Sea and the waters of the Sea of Azov. On air, he noted that Russian ships are already in ports, but enemy missiles are firing at both Odessa and Nikolaev. Therefore, the first task that needs to be solved is to ensure the safety of shipping. From Ochakov, from Yuzhny, from all ports that are under our control. That is, ensuring that there are no threats from the air. Secondly, that there are no saboteurs. Thirdly, that there are no sea mines. This will give us the opportunity to increase our shipping, I think, definitely more than 100 million tons per year, precisely from these ports. Ryzenko emphasized.